Let's pray. Dear God, pry us open that we might receive by some miracle that word that you have for us today. In the midst of all the noise of the world, God, whisper to our soul that we might know we've been in your presence when we leave this place. Amen. I'm confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. You know, when my kids were little, I don't think they ever owned a brand new pair of shoes that fit them perfectly. Right? Because I always bought them just a little too big, with that pinch in the toe, so they could grow into them, and they would put them on and look at me, and I would say, "You're going to grow into them." And they did grow into them, right before they grew out of them, right? But those of you who are all grown up, I'll bet when you go shopping for shoes, you look for some that fit you just perfectly, don't you? How many of you grown-ups still buy your shoes this much too big, hoping you'll grow into them? I didn't think so. Because if you're like me, your feet are exactly the same size they were a year ago, aren't they? And they're the same size now as they were a year ago, aren't they? But guess what? Our souls have grown. Our souls are not the same as they were a year ago. Our bodies stop growing, but that's deceptive because we never stop growing. Our spirits continue to grow because they are alive. And if we are grafted in to the one true vine, if we are living branches, then we continue to grow for as long as we live. And we are living stones, made according to God's specification and purpose. Now that's something to consider when you sense God moving in you. It's something to remember when you feel that holy nudge pushing you into a new position, into a new project, into a new ministry. That's something to consider when you're feeling yourself drawn into something that feels just a little bit too big for you. Maybe it's something that you will grow into. When we first learn to read the Bible, that's not easy. All those words, they don't go together in sentences like we speak. When we take on a mission project, we don't know what we're going to be doing. Maybe we've never done that before. When we're asked to head up a ministry team at church, oh my goodness, how do they do that? When we get promoted into a new grade at school, it's a little scary at first. When we have our first child, oh my goodness, what do you do with this? The books don't tell you everything. And every time we take on something new, it is a little bit daunting, isn't it? But then with a little practice, it gets easier. Or at least less awkward. We kind of figure it out. We grow into it. And God uses us in the way that God needs us. God stretches us and challenges us and builds us up into a holy dwelling place where the Spirit of God is pleased to dwell. Now, the more you're willing to trust God, the more you're willing to step out on faith. The more you journey with God, the easier it gets. The less daunting it becomes. The more readily you're willing next time to step out and to journey and to trust, the more comfortable you become. Now that doesn't mean you're not afraid. Oh no. I know when I'm doing something new, I'm often afraid. In fact, sometimes I'm downright terrified. But because I've done that step and journey thing before, I trust that things will go well, or at least I'll survive it. And I've learned to do it afraid. I don't let fear stop me from doing what I feel like God has called me to do. I just do it afraid. The first time I ever sang in public, I hid behind the piano. And they kept saying, come out here. Oh, no. And then pretty soon I didn't sing at all because I was turned this way with my eyes tightly shut. And as soon as I was through singing, the microphone back, and I fled out the nearest exit. But I survived. And the first time I stood up to preach, my lungs would not take in air. My heart was in my throat. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't read my notes, and I was just sure my voice was shaking too. I felt like I was going to pass out. But I didn't. And over time, singing and preaching has gotten a little easier. A little easier. Like any good parent, God knows us better than we know ourselves. God puts us where there's just a little room left we need to grow. Like any parent, God has more confidence in our abilities than we do. Do you remember when you were teaching a child to walk? And there comes a point when you know they can do it. If they would just let go, they could walk. But they don't know they can do it. So you put one person there and one person here, and there's 3 steps in between, and you go, come here, come here. And the only reason they take those first few steps is because they trust you are going to catch them when they fall. And they fall. And they have to get back up. Because nobody learns how to walk without falling. That's just part of it. And that first time when a kid learns to ride the bicycle, and you're running along beside them going, you're doing it, you're doing it. And then you let go, but they don't know you let go, and you're still running along beside them, you're doing it. And then they look back and see that you've let go and wreck. Right? Because they don't have as much confidence in their abilities as you do. God is like that with us sometimes. Sometimes God is running right along beside us going, you're doing it. You're doing it. And sure enough, with a little bit of practice, we are. As long as we're willing to wreck now and then, as long as we're willing to make a mistake now and then, because when we stop being willing to make a mistake, then we can't grow. Because mistakes are part of it. Failure is part of success. And kids know that. Kids do that all the time. Whiff! Oh, the ball's still in the tee. They don't quit. They don't go, I'm not getting out there. That's hard. We can take a lesson from them. We have to be willing sometimes to look ridiculous, to make a mistake, to fail, before we can practice and get better at it and get to where we can do it. As adults, we think failures are something to be embarrassed about. Which is nonsense, of course, but we don't care about that. We want to look good. If we can't do it perfectly and easily, we don't want to attempt it at all. But that's just not the way growth happens. Growth happens one step at a time with practice until we get where we can do it. on our own. And then we find that we have grown. How many of y'all have driven down Lake Emma Road recently? See? All right, well, when God is building something, it's like that. You see, they're building that, and then they've been building it a long time. And when they first started building it, I'm like, oh, great, that'll be ready by spring. No. So I'm like, oh, it'll be ready by summer. No. And it is a mess, isn't it? Right now, if you go down that road, it is just a mess. Dirt everywhere. And it's been worse than that. Things closed off, stuff dug up, equipment, pipes. It doesn't look pretty. But they're not finished with it yet. And that's what happens when you're building something. Things get kind of ugly for a while. There's dirt everywhere. It doesn't make any sense. An outsider doesn't know the master plan and can't tell you when it's going to be finished. But this last week, if you were paying attention, you can see where the curve is starting to go in, right? And there's this outline of what is about to take shape there. You can kind of see it taking shape along the edges. I think that's how God builds us. We sometimes don't know what God is doing. It doesn't make any sense. It can get messy and dirty. And then, if you're paying attention and you're really looking for it, you can start to see the outline of something taking shape. And when that is completed, it will serve many more people. And it will run a lot smoother. And the inconvenience and the mess and the uncertainty will come to an end. And it will be as if it had always been that way. You know, our church is growing. Our church is growing in spiritual ways. We are in the middle of building something. God is in the middle of building something here. We are taking steps towards becoming something that will reveal and will reflect how our souls have grown. We are becoming an outward-focused, mission-centered ministry that is poised to make a difference in this community. We are focused on what our call is to be a source of light, to provide much needed services. Jesus said, I came to serve, not to be served. We are changing the lives of the people who live in these neighborhoods. We are changing our lives. God is changing our lives. And you know, it's going to take some practice. You know, we're going to make some mistakes. You know, it's going to be kind of awkward as we launch these new ministries. It might even be scary at times. But we'll grow into it. We'll grow into it. God is stretching us because we are alive. We are living stones. And God is building a living church here. It is what God has called us to be and do. And with a little faith, we will be powerful witnesses for Christ. We will be a place where the light of God can be seen in the faces of the people. We will be a place where the love of God is alive in word and in deed. We will be a place where the just and peaceful kingdom of God is taught and lived. I am confident that the one who began this good work in you will bring it to to completion. That in this place, a holy dwelling will grow and thrive. A place where the Spirit of God is pleased to dwell. Amen.